struck me. And I clearly remember this. It was early New Year's Day, maybe 2 in the morning, and I was driving back to my home in the back of a limousine. I'd just come from a black tie party. Great old wines were being served, and I thought, you know, a lot of men in this country would want to be exactly where I am right now. But God, there's got to be more to life than this. You know, this can't be why I'm working so hard. And then a few weeks later, I was in Philadelphia on a deposition, and it went over the weekend, and it was snowing. And I remember flying back that weekend, and it was the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul. And the Bible has 4 different versions of Paul's conversion. But the one that I was reading in the breviary that day was from the 26th chapter of Acts. And it differs from all the other versions. And in that, Jesus calls out to Paul and says, "It's hard for you to kick against the goad." And I tell you, it was like a weight was lifted off of my shoulder. You know, for most of my life, I'd been kicking against the goad. And it was at that instant, as we were landing at Tampa Airport, that I decided to explore the religious life. I thought I was too old. I thought that I'd basically squandered my chance at ever becoming a Jesuit, or even becoming a diocesan priest. That was in 2007. Over the next year and a half, I just started giving my stuff away. Slowly giving everything I owned away. And I tell you what, that was the most liberating experience of my life. And many close friends of mine said, you know, you ought to go see a psychiatrist because this isn't normal behavior. But I was feeling for the first time this real sense of indifference. A sense that I wasn't being tied down to anything except what I thought was God's will. And poverty no longer became scary to me because, you know, poverty, as professed by the Jesuits and other religious orders, is not destitution. It's that indifference. Everything that I own, I can stick in a suitcase and be sent somewhere else in a matter of a few hours. So I went off to the Jesuit novitiate in Grand Coteau in 2009. And it was hard. I'm not going to pretend that it was anything but hard. I was the oldest man by far in my class. If any of you saw the Rodney Dangerfield movie where he goes back to college, that was me in Grand Coteau. And I've gone from a city like Tampa that has some of the restaurants with some of the world's greatest wine lists to drinking wine out of a Mylar bag in a box. But you know what? I didn't care, which surprised me. It was this sense of liberation that I can't describe. But what was more liberating was the process of experimentation during the novitiate. We had to beg. We were given $5. I had to beg from Texas to New York City. And it worked. I begged like a homeless person. And when I was there, I lived in a homeless shelter. I didn't think I had the strength to do that. But my novice master, Mark Thibodeau, a great spiritual director, said to me particularly, when you choose your experiments, choose the ones that terrify you the most. And the idea of sleeping in a homeless shelter terrified me the most. And what came after that? I had to beg my way down to Mobile and work in a l'Arche community. And for those of you who know what l'Arche is, I was changing adult diapers and giving medication to profoundly disabled adults. But you see Christ in these people. You don't see them as a burden. I never thought that I'd ever view that, but as as Arupe said, unless we learn to see people as having their own dignity, we can't love them. We can't be Christ to them. And that's what these experiments were all about. Working in a juvenile detention center in McAllen, all of you students here have much more opportunities and blessings than these kids who have never been given the first chance in life. And to see them struggling to find God in their lives, which have been nothing but heartache and brutality, and try to bring Christ in them, you have to see Christ in them first. And then living in a mud hut in Guyana with no electricity, no running water. Why? Because that's what Jesuits do. Like Xavier. These people that I read about in college and I thought were so romantic, well, it's not so romantic to live in a mud hut, but you know what? It's inspiring anyway. Bringing Christ to the frontiers of our world. Thomas Becket, I don't know if you saw the movie, I don't know if this is a true life story, but in the movie, Thomas Becket, when he gave up his worldly positions and became the Archbishop of Canterbury, he was giving all this stuff away, and he looked up, he said, God, is it this easy to do? Well, of course it wasn't. He ended up being killed a few minutes later in the movie by Henry II. And I remember saying that same thing, God, is it this easy? Well, it wasn't. At the end of my first year of the novitiate, I came home, saw Kent Corral, and he diagnosed me with cancer. Well, then, that kind of tests what you really believe. And any sense of control that I thought I had, well, it was completely illusory. And for a couple of days after my surgery, I waited very anxiously for the eventual test results that suggested the cancer had probably not spread. It's terrifying. But you know what? If that had happened to me as a lawyer, my sense of loss of control, I think, would have been debilitating. But as I sat there, I knew that whatever happened, there was a reason for it. There was a purpose. There was a dimension to this. And it was at that point that I realized, even though I have not in any way achieved the indifference that Ignatius had, I think I was heading in the right direction. So while I'm not the man for others that Father Arupe talked about 40 years ago in Spain, I hope right now he's looking down and saying, you know what, better late than never. And so my words of encouragement to the students especially, but to all of us here, be open to embracing God's dream for